One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday, and it's the best day of the week, not just because the weekend is almost here, but because this is the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show. My name is Jim Lakely. I'm Executive Vice President of the Heartland Institute and your host. Heartland is an organization that has been around for 41 years, and we are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland and this show bringing the data, the science, the truth that counters the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every single day of your life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will bring friends to this show every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And also like, share, and subscribe, and leave your comments underneath the video. All of these very easy actions convince YouTube's algorithm, allegedly, to smile upon this program. And that gets the show in front of even more people. And as a reminder, big tech and the legacy media do not really approve of the way we discuss climate and energy on this program. So Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. If you want to support this program, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. And you can join other friends of this program that help bring the program to the world every single week. And we also want to thank our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, What's Up With That, the CO2 Coalition, and Heartland UK Europe. We have a big show with some big breaking news, so let's get started. As usual, we have with us Anthony Watts, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change, What's Up With That? Sterling Burnett, the Archbishop of Canterbury, also the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center on Climate and Environmental Policy at the Heartland Institute, Linnea Lucan, Research Fellow for Energy and Environment Policy at Heartland, and also producer Andy Singer behind the curtain, making sure this show flows great and is error-free. We'll see if we can get that done. And let's also welcome back to the program our friend Steve Malloy, the climate hoax slayer. He's also a fellow at the E&E Legal Institute, publisher of junkscience.com, author of several books from a climate realist perspective, and also a board member at the Heartland Institute. And as we discover every time he's on the show, the greatest technical challenge since AI.
I'm here, though.
You are here, and you sound awesome. So we will not put up with any comments, any of you guys in the comments complaining about Steve's audio this week, at least if the microphone holds up for the entire, hour or so. All right. This is big news. We had to actually, the original title of this program was The Global Climate Tax is Here. And literally an hour before we went to air came the news that a meeting in London of UN potentates, see, that was the original thumbnail right there. There's the new one because it was almost here just an hour before it went to air. What we expected to happen, because you always expect the worst for the United Nations, is that they would try to sneak in a global climate tax based on taxing shipping, and it failed. We're going to get into the details of how and why that failed in a little bit, so definitely stick around for that. It's quite an exciting story. But before we get to that, we like to do the program in the beginning with our favorite segment, which is the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Andy. Excellent. Thank you very much, Bill Nye. All right. Our first item today, we're giving dolphins Alzheimer's. This comes from Anthony Watts' website. What's Up With That? Claim: climate change is giving Alzheimer's to Florida's dolphins. This is from What's Up With That author Eric Worrell, and it's a story from Vice, which I thought wasn't around anymore, but apparently it still is. Let me read a bit here for you. Well, here's a bummer of a story. Dolphins are getting Alzheimer's, and climate change might be the one driving them senile. That ultimately means that we are giving dolphins Alzheimer's, added to the ever-growing list of scary effects of climate change that are suddenly all rearing their ugly heads at the same time. A new study published in Communication Biology examining the brains of 20 common bottlenose dolphins that stranded themselves in Florida's Indian River Lagoon between 2010 and 2019 found they showed Alzheimer's-like brain damage. Dolphins that washed ashore during algal bloom seasons and had brain concentrations of a neurotoxin, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, that were an astounding 2,900 times higher than those that beached during less toxic times. Author Eric Worrell comments, so they took a bunch of dead dolphins which beached themselves during algal blooms and compared them to dead dolphins which beached themselves in other times and concluded that the algal blooms caused the problem. The study also claims that humans are at risk because of food chain amplification. Anthony, this is from your site. I don't know. This study seems a little fishy to me.
Yeah, it's just, these guys, they grasp at straws. Anything they can get their hands on to try to prove that climate change is an impending disaster for life on the planet, or whatever it might be. They will latch onto it, come up with some bogus studies. In this particular study, it's not even good science. They completely missed the fact that there's all these problems associated with sewage contamination going into the ocean that is bringing all kinds of parasites and diseases and so forth to these poor animals. But no, let's ignore all that. It's climate change. Seriously, it is the biggest load of crap I've seen in probably months.
Yeah, the nutrient loading is important for the algae blooms. It's critical. Warm waters, Florida's already warm waters. They're not appreciably warmer. My first thought was, well, have the dolphins just been getting it by contact with the older retired people in Florida? How do you know? But also, the main problem I have with the study is, well, how do you explain the beachings when the algal blooms weren't there? And, really, what is your database? How long is the history? How do you tie it to climate change? Because the algal blooms aren't tied to climate change.
Yeah.
So, it's not algae blooms or the toxins that are in the algae are not tied to climate change. There's no long-term history that shows that, a comparative history. And you've had these beachings before and they weren't tied to algae blooms. So I don't know really what the use of this study was at all.
Yeah, if our commenter here, John Z, is correct, then if the article was written by a statistician, the Alzheimer's article, then we should get William Briggs here on it and see what he thinks about their p values or something, because I'm sure that they have something wild going on in that article.
Well, I'm a statistician, and I know that eutrophication and algal blooms are entirely natural. It's like Sterling said, it's a matter of nutrients. It depends on how deep the water is, how fast it's moving, what the temperature. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But past all that, okay, let's just say that these dolphins got Alzheimer's, which is a human condition, not a dolphin condition. Let's just say they got it. I'm still not willing to destroy the world standard of living over something like this.
Yeah. Yep.
I would have to know if they had Alzheimer's by seeing if they were doddering around in the ocean, not identifying their young, calling their nieces and nephews with clicks by the names of their fathers and mothers. The
whole thing is just silly. It's just sensationalism.
Yeah. Now, maybe Flipper lost the remote. Who knows? It happens. It's fine. All right.
Well, this is wait, Jim, 1 second. Sorry, I have to comment on this. So this commenter says all the oldies in Florida are passing their Alzheimer's drugs into the sea via sewage. My question is, maybe they stopped getting drugs into the ocean by mishandling getting rid of them. Perhaps Perhaps these dolphins were being prevented from having Alzheimer's before because they were getting drugs in the water outlets, and now they're not. So now they're getting Alzheimer's.
It's ridiculous.
And what's funny is that theory is about as legit as the other theory.
Yeah.
So there we go. All right.
I was afraid he was going down the path that somehow the drugs were causing it, and I was going to ask if that's RFK, hiding himself.
Right. All right. Let's move on before this gets too ugly. All right. Number 2, I can't believe it's not butter. This comes from CBS News. Headline: Butter made from carbon tastes like the real thing. Gets backing from Bill Gates. Of course it does. I'll read a bit here. A company in Batavia, Illinois, which is up around where I live here in Illinois, is making butter in a way you've never seen before. No animals, no plants, no oils. This butter is made from carbon. The sustainability-focused approach has the blessing and backing of Bill Gates. It looks, smells, and tastes like the butter we all know, but it's made without the farmland, fertilizers, or emissions tied to the typical process. This unprecedented process is happening at the facilities of Savor in an industrial park in the suburbs west of Chicago. Here's how it works. Fats are made up of carbon and hydrogen chains. The goal is to replicate those chains without animals or plants. And they did it. To put it in simple terms, Savor says they take carbon dioxide from the air and hydrogen from water, heat them up, oxidize them, and get a final result that looks like candle wax, but is in fact fat molecules like those in beef, cheese, or vegetable oils. The entire process releases 0 greenhouse gases, uses no farmland to feed cows, and despite its industrial appearance, has a significantly smaller footprint. And the most important question: how does it taste? The answer is surprisingly like the butter we know and love. Yeah, sure. And this product is supposedly going to be available to the public to add to their pantries next year. Linnea, I'm a butter guy, no margarine. No, I can't believe it's not butter, because I do believe it's not butter. So that's how that goes. Are you going to give this product a shot?
No, I spend a stupid amount of money on the butter that I buy at the grocery store. I buy the fancy stuff, except for, if I'm making like mass amounts of whatever. So there's no way in heck I'm paying any money at all for something that's not even butter.
Jim almost stole my line when he said, "I can't believe it's not butter." My line was, "I can't believe it's just carbon." I think there should be truth in labeling. Near meat is not meat. Almond milk is not milk. And neither is soy milk or any of that other crap. It doesn't come from an udder. And this is not butter. It's not even margarine. It's lab tech margarine type stuff. It may taste good. I don't know. But, they're claiming something. That it is less impactful on the environment. And so I'd have to know how much energy is used and where that energy comes from to, fuse the carbon, the water, the resources that go into that. Because what they found with that fake meat is that you have to have such a sterile laboratory. The energy costs of that are quite high, and so the emissions are quite high, and they need to be counted against and compared with when they compare it to cow the emissions from cows and other. So I'd need to know for sure, not just them telling me, "Oh well, all we do is heat the stuff." How much does it cost to heat the stuff, and what are you using to electrify everything?
I'm thinking that after they get this stuff to market, and it goes through the trials and into the supermarkets or whatever, they're going to have to rebrand it afterwards too. I can't believe they won't buy this shit.
Yeah, look,
Can't believe that.
I mean, what effect on the environment does making butter have anyway that we, that's so great that we need to, reduce it? It's just, the whole thing is nuts.
Well, I mean, it's this whole thing, and we're going to there's more Bill Gates coming up here soon along these same lines, but it's this whole idea that human activity is causing such a catastrophic climate catastrophe that we have to change the way we do literally everything to live in order to save it. And Bill Gates is a big believer in that.
Yeah, of course, and that's been their line for the last 20 years, and we have pretty much knocked that down. They're all full of it, from Al Gore to Bill Gates. What does Bill Gates know about the environment? Nothing that I've ever seen.
Well, and I guess I would be more convinced by Bill Gates' humanitarianism and his work on the environment if he lived himself personally like he was concerned about the environment, as opposed to creating products for other people to live that way. You know, when he stops traveling in private jets, when he stops having tremendously large homes. I know he gives a lot to his charity, but he's not living in one of those tiny homes.
No.
He himself does not have a small carbon footprint. His footprint and the footprint of his company is probably larger than some small countries.
You know, Sterling, I mean, Bill Gates has thrown billions and billions of dollars into this climate crap, and he has produced zero.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
all
look,
you know about him.
You know, did Bill Gates take a sailboat to Epstein's Island? No, he flew. He's a hypocrite. That's the worst. That's the worst sin.
Yeah, I would say for sure that, you know, he's at the very least living Jason Isaac's proposed high carbon lifestyle for sure. Yeah.
That's right. And that's fun. All right, let's move on to our next item here. Again,
all I know is if we get canceled, it wasn't me and my comment about it was Jim.
For once it is me. Yes. Great. All right. This is why we will never be monetized again. I can see the steam coming out of Andy's ears right now. All right. Our third item here, again, it's Bill Gates, global overlord. I found this on X this week from the fantastic account Wall Street Mav, very popular on X. He had a video where Bill Gates says that he wants to either get rid of all cows and or jab the cows with drugs to change their digestive systems, all to reduce greenhouse gases, which are actually not destroying the planet. And we've been meaning to get to Bill Gates's nutty obsession with cows and controlling the world for quite a while. This video kind of lays out a lot of his grand plans for you and me and billions of others. It's a couple minutes, but I think it's worth watching because he lays out his case like a Bond villain in a Mr. Rogers sweater. So go ahead and play that, Andy.
Are about 5% of global emissions, which is pretty unbelievable.
Wild.
And if your goal is to get to zero, you don't get to skip the cows or the steel or the cement or, you know, any of those big areas. Cows and other grass-eating species have a digestion system that emits methane. And methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. And so cows alone account for about 6% of global emissions. And so we need to change cows. So there's a whole class of solutions of making meat without cows. In terms of the cows, we pursued many solutions. So one is to vaccinate the cows in a way that their gut bacteria that emit the methane, which is the second most important greenhouse gas, you can vaccinate them and that species of bacteria isn't there. Of all the categories, the one that has gone better than I would have expected 5 years ago is this work to make what's called artificial meat. And so you have people like Impossible or Beyond Meat, both of which I invested in.
Is it healthier for you or just healthier for the atmosphere?
It's slightly healthier for you in terms of less cholesterol. It's, of course, dramatic reduction in methane emissions. My climate group, Breakthrough Energy, just announced literally today an investment in an Australian group called Ruminate that helps cows not be so much a source of methane emissions. So we have two paths to solving that. That's 6% of global emissions are cows who burp and fart methane to an extreme degree. You can either fix the cows to stop them doing that, or you can make beef
without the cow. And both of those, will be pursued to see which one can lead to the best product.
It's just a question which solution for which country ends up being the best.
Boy, like I said, a Bond villain in a Mr. Rogers sweater.
You know, I have to think based on the history of his success with Windows, if he comes up with a new and improved cow, it's immediately going to crash and tip over, and then they're going to have to come out with Cal 2.0.
There'll be constant updates that don't work as well as the original.
Yeah, right. Well,
but
you're from Texas. There's lots of cows down there, and this sounds like a great plan. Yeah,
I listened to him, and I think when he was a small child, maybe 3 or 5 years old, he must have been on a farm one day. His parents took him out to a farm, and he had picked up some grass, and a little, old Bessie comes strolling over to him, and he thought it was charging, and maybe it was passing gas at the same time. And so he's got this huge phobia about cows ever since he was a child. He brags about Beyond Meat. Oh, he invested in Beyond Meat. Yeah, it's trading at less than $1 a share right now. It's collapsed because the market for his products collapsed. I haven't looked into the other company that he invested in, but I'll wager it's gone downhill quite a bit too after having billions in market cap. Why did it have market cap so much? Well, because Bill Gates was behind it. Everyone jumped on board. And guess what? They're not selling the product. It's losing money. It's stock. The stock owners are losing money hand over fist. And it's also unnecessary. Now, I can't speak for world emissions, but I know U.S. emissions. Cows don't produce 6% of U.S. emissions. The EPA says they produce livestock, cows and pigs and sheep, all three, produce less than 3% of our emissions. Farming as a whole produces about 6%. So I don't know if his numbers are right, but I do know I wouldn't touch his meat product. I don't want to eat any cow that he's jabbed or his company has jabbed. Don't give me the cow, the jab for the cow with the jab. And the companies, he's talking about how it's a great thing. It's taken off. It's not taken off. It's collapsing all around.
Yeah, he's just always wrong about everything. He said there that methane was the second most important greenhouse gas. I mean, that's not true. If you go to Google, type in methane and irrelevant, you'll get to what's up with that, where there's an article, methane is the irrelevant greenhouse gas, and it'll explain why. And in any event, water is the most important greenhouse gas, followed by carbon dioxide. And since methane's irrelevant, where is it? And then he makes the comment that somehow his cows are going to reduce your cholesterol level. Of course, that's not true. It doesn't, dietary cholesterol does not affect your cholesterol level on a chronic basis. So the whole, it's just, he doesn't know anything, but he pretends to be this expert.
Yeah. I mean, you could say it's all bullshit.
Good.
Well, look, he's got the problem of hubris that a lot of people who've been very successful have. They know one field really well. They develop innovations in that field, and they think because they have changed the world, and he has helped change the world, he knows everything about everything. He's smart enough to run everybody's life because he ran his company.
Yeah, but once again, I mean, past Microsoft, where he was really the marketing guy, not the technical genius. That was, right? That was somebody else. He's been in climate for a very long time, spent billions of dollars, has accomplished nothing. If he was a businessman, I mean, he no one would give him any money. He's got to spend his own.
Well, he's succeeded in getting transfers of vast amounts of sums of money by working with all of these NGOs and the United Nations and all this stuff, and to keep, he's welcome to all of these conferences because he's basically paying his way in there.
Yeah,
and he's cost a lot of people money. I mean, he's made a lot of people money with Microsoft and the sales, but every time he convinces them to invest in one of these green boondoggles, they lose money. The stock it was trading. It was 1.6 billion. Now it's a couple $100 million. It's trading at less than $1 a share. It might be delisted soon.
Yeah. Anything to add, Linnea?
I'm shocked that anybody still
No, I
uses.
forgot what I was going to say.
What's that, Steve?
I'm shocked that anybody still uses Microsoft equipment.
Yeah. Well, you and I are both Mac guys, so leave that where it is. All right. Let's move on to our last item of the
hockey stick.
That's right. The reverse hockey stick is the Beyond Meat stock price. Look at that. Look at that. Almost, between what is that? Must be $175 a share. Is that what that is? Back in I guess early 2021, and now it's a penny stock. It's bankrupt. I think I saw that they're basically going to shut down operations by the end of this year or something like that.
Someone should do a report on everything he's invested in, and let's see where everything is.
Yeah, it's like the reverse Jim Cramer index. You just you do the opposite of what Jim Cramer on CSNBC says, and you make a fortune. All right. Let's get to our last item in the crazy climate news, and this is something that I know is close to the heart. We've covered this a lot on this program, and this is how the climate kids are losing in court again. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. Obama judge tosses John Podesta endorsed lawsuit claiming Trump's energy policies are killing children. Podesta's appearance as an expert witness was unable to salvage the case brought by 22 children against President Trump. I'll read a bit here. An Obama-appointed judge in Montana dismissed with prejudice, that's serious, a high-profile lawsuit a group of 22 children brought against the Trump administration, accusing it of pursuing energy policies that will worsen global warming and, as a result, threaten their lives. The plaintiffs argued that 3 energy-focused executive orders Trump signed shortly after taking office violate their Fifth Amendment rights to life and liberty by worsening pollution that threatens their health and futures. They said the actions escalate, quote, climate-related dangers and infringe upon their rights to personal security. Their complaint asked the federal district court in Montana to block implementation of the executive orders, something that would have potentially erased hundreds of policies a dozen separate federal agencies have announced since Trump took office. In effect, the complaint sought to reverse Trump's energy agenda. John Podesta, who oversaw Joe Biden's climate agenda, testified before the court in support of the lawsuit as a, quote, expert witness last month. During his nearly 2 hours of testimony, Podesta argued that Trump's orders are illegal. He took personal digs at Trump, and he blasted federal policies benefiting the oil industry. In his order Wednesday, however, Judge Dana Christensen wrote that the lawsuit, quote, amounts to hundreds of lawsuits bundled in a single case. He said the courts lack the authority to block the executive orders. Quote, while this court is certainly troubled by the very real harms presented by climate change and the executive order's effect on carbon dioxide emissions, this concern does not automatically confer upon it the power to act. Plaintiffs are effectively asking that this court order the United States to return to the environmental policy of the previous administration. Christensen continued, noting that such an injunction would not prevent the Trump administration from still pursuing its agenda to prioritize fossil fuels and suppress green energy using other means. Steve Malloy, you are an attorney, and if they think this is bad, wait till Trump kills the endangerment finding.
Well, I got to hand it to this judge a little bit. I mean, he's obviously, a climate bedwetter. He buys into the whole scare. He's just like, oh my God, this would require me controlling the whole federal government. And he's got to be the first Democrat appointed judge that hasn't said, yeah, I can't wait to do that.
Right.
So, kudos to him for backing off and realizing that this is really silly. The answer on all these lawsuits is that, climate is obviously a political issue. There's no extant legislation or anything that allows anybody to regulate anything. So it's really it's going to be up to Congress. And of course, Congress is not going to, at least this Congress is not going to do anything. Even when the Democrats ran Congress, they couldn't do anything. No one can do anything because the whole thing is just ridiculous. So, these are just the last gasps of a dying hoax. And when you've got 25-year-old plaintiffs and you're calling them children, I mean, that should be a bad sign.
Well, they also, they say, oh, it would take us back to Biden era policies. Well, the problem, one of the problems for them is that there's no evidence whatsoever that Biden era policies were going to prevent greenhouse gas emission rise and climate change, if that's what's driving the rise. They'd have to take us back to the policies of the 1820s, to get us to where we need to be, if you believe CO2 emissions are driving climate change. So it is ridiculous. The court is right. This is and always has been a political decision to be made by the legislature, and in particular, Congress of the United States, not any state legislature, not any state court. Why? Interstate commerce is intimately involved. You can't get around that. And Congress alone has the right, the authority, the delegated power to regulate interstate commerce, which, by the way, didn't mean regulate. It meant make regular. So states could trade with each other. By the way, just got to step back. I checked into Impossible Foods. Impossible Foods is also losing money hand over fist.
Impossible.
Yeah. And they say the valuation has declined because people are rejecting the food. They're so, it's not just
what I find kind of astonishing about all these lawsuits is these judges, they're really kind of stupid. I remember when I was in college, we all looked down on people that wanted to go to law school. We thought they were kind of stupid. And, this judge, for just believing the hoax, is kind of like that. Yesterday, there is a judge in Louisiana, a state judge, who is holding up the permit for an LNG facility because someone's got to review its emissions. Well, that one facility, even if you believe in the hoax, there's no way that one facility makes a difference. So, what's the matter with these people? Can't they reason things out for themselves? Can nobody think anymore?
And can't they? If they're judges, they're not legislators. They're not voters. They need to follow the law.
That means they don't have this much intelligence. Well,
Well, here, you're an attorney, Steve. I've always wondered, how the hell do they have standing to sue? It's a eternal frustration to me as I look at the American legal system, especially the federal legal system. People who seem to have direct harm based on things that are happening in the world. Suddenly a judge says you don't have standing to sue. And yet you have these kids saying that your policy, canceling wind projects off the shores of on the Atlantic endangers my future and the air I breathe. And these cases go on and on and on.
It's got to be special harm. It can't even just be harm. It's got to be special harm.
We could have several shows just on the legal aspects of all this. But as far as standing, that's just an arbitrary decision. That's why, you forum shop. So you can find a judge that is going to put your lawsuit into motion. And, you try to stay out of courts where they're going to say you don't have standing. And courts like to give standing. Judges like to get involved. Unless it's total nonsense. The system obviously doesn't work. And no one, of course, nobody wants to fix it because judges, like the special status they have, lawyers like the fees they generate. And it's the rest of us that pay the price.
How much cheaper would our oil be? Would our gasoline be? Or natural gas be? If these oil companies weren't spending inordinate amounts of money in court every year across the country on these worthless climate cases? Would it affect it 2 or 3 cents a gallon? I suspect.
I don't know. I would hope that it would just go to dividends for shareholders like me. I don't really.
Yeah, let it be known for the record that Steve Malloy is the only member of this podcast who's swimming in oil money, big oil money, not the Heartland Institute as an institution. That's I want to be very clear about that. All right. Okay, well, let's get going to our main topic today. It's a big one. It's big news. As I said at the top of the show, we were expecting a different result because the United Nations was going to impose that, via the International Maritime Organization, was going to impose taxes on global shipping, which would amount to a global carbon dioxide tax that everybody around the world would have to pay. But especially the United States, since we have the largest economy. So And literally about an hour and 10 minutes before we came to air, broke the news that the vote that we expected to go one way, in the bad way, imposing this tax, actually went the other way, but there's a very good reason for that. Andy, if you can bring up the story here from the BBC. Headline is Landmark Global Shipping Deal in Tatters After U.S. Pressure. So let's fill in the details here. A landmark deal to cut global shipping emissions has been abandoned after Saudi Arabia and the U.S. succeeded in ending the talks. More than 100 countries had gathered in London to approve a deal first agreed in April, which would have seen shipping become the world's first industry to adopt internationally mandated targets to reduce emissions. But President Trump had called the plan a, quote, green scam, and representatives of his administration had threatened countries with tariffs if they had voted in favor. Reflecting the pressure countries faced, the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Arsenio Dominguez, issued a plea for this not to be repeated. In a dramatic conclusion on Friday, that's today, when countries should have been voting to approve the deal, Saudi Arabia tabled a motion to adjourn the talks for a year. The chairman said this would mean that the agreement was not approved, as key timelines for the treaty would have to be revised. The motion passed by just a handful of votes. Honorable Ralph Reagan-Vanu, Minister of Climate Change for the Republic of Vanuatu, said Saudi Arabia's motion was, quote, unacceptable given the urgency we face in light of the accelerating climate change, unquote. We came to London in reluctant support of the IMO's net zero framework. While it lacks the ambition that climate science demands, it does mark a significant step. Now, the UK and most EU nations voted to continue the talks, which would have kept the tax alive and probably passed. But some countries, including Greece, went against the European Union bloc and voted to abstain. The countries that voted in favor of adjourning the talks included Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. Some key countries, including China, that had initially voted to support the deal in April, agreed to delay the proceedings. And curiously, island states, the Bahamas and Antigua and Barbuda, also changed their position to come on the side of Donald Trump and the United States. Now, Steve, this is surprising and very, very good news. If Kamala or Joe Biden were president, there would be right now imposed today a new global carbon tax. But with Trump as president, flexing his muscles, it's done for the year and maybe done for at least the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, how awesome is it that not only did we not sign the treaty, but we threatened countries that agreed to sign the treaty with tariffs. I mean, that is just, wow. Let's do that to all the other, climate agreements. The other point I'd like to make is, how ridiculous this whole thing is. Over the last couple of years, there have been a handful of studies that have been published in, Nature and Science and, mainstream climate hoax journals, reporting that cleaner air helped cause the 23-24 warming spike. And the reason the air was cleaner was because shippers were using low sulfur oil, which sent fewer sulfate aerosols into the atmosphere to reflect sunlight back. So, if they're trying to reduce shipping emissions, well, then we're going to have even fewer sulfur aerosols in the atmosphere, and we're going to have even more warming. So, it just goes to show that these guys they don't really have a coherent agenda.
Yeah, plus that, it's been suggested that the aerosols from ship emissions had a factor in changing cloud cover. They don't understand what they're talking about. They're just grabbing at straws. They're just trying to reduce any emissions because any emissions are apparently bad. That's all they think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And what I think about when I see this is I remember when after the election, people like the Secretary General Gutierrez of the United Nations and John Kerry and others would say, this changes nothing. The green agenda goes forward. We're going to save the planet. Well, I guess that isn't actually true. I guess Donald Trump can actually use the power of the United States for good and to stop letting us and the rest of the world and you and me, regular people, get bullied and ordered around by a powerful global entity to which nobody voted for and doesn't even have any legal authority. So this was going to be a treaty to agree to impose taxes, I suppose. And Trump, by his force of will, said nope and turned. So don't tell me that people don't respect Donald Trump, because his threats turned this whole thing around.
Sure
Yeah,
did.
I mean, surprisingly, last night the Times of London came out against this, saying that, well, this is going to really be the first UN tax, and the UN has no sovereign authority over the UK, and Parliament hasn't voted on this, and the UK can't just impose this. So they, Keir Starmer, the UK PM, had agreed to it, but I guess he's changed his mind.
Well, look, I thought the story indicated that he hadn't changed his mind, that the UK still supported it, but Greece and a couple other nations, but not the UK, rejected it.
Yeah, the UK did wanted to go forward with it. Yeah, they did. So that's not.
Well, they're probably, who knows? I mean, now that the whole thing is falling apart, they can say, they can blame Trump and be, quietly happy that the whole thing failed.
They could do the right thing by accident.
Yeah, because Trump was going to impose tariffs on the UK
and trade restrictions. And
so they can pretend to be green and blame Trump. That's fine.
And we all win.
I want to say this about the United Nations, because I saw, in the wake of the original news, I saw a lot of people online saying, oh, well, the UN is abandoning their charter. This is so wrong. The UN is, failing in their purpose. They're attacking, US sovereignty, and they're just spending our money and blah, blah, blah. And my point on that is, no, they don't fail in their purpose, because their purpose is to attack national sovereignty and to spend our money. Like, that's what they're there for. That is the purpose of the United Nations.
Right.
Yeah, maybe Trump can send some ICE agents to the UN building. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah,
No
deport.
offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Well, if he did, some court would say he can't do that, and
he could ignore it and just.
Well, but he's not. They took down the fence in Chicago that they had erected, and he's playing ball until he gets a higher court. To approve it, but still,
my money's on Trump, Sterling.
I can tell from all the hats behind you in the background there. Yeah, you got quite a collection of MAGA hats back there.
Yeah. He's got a long memory. He's going to remember everything, and he's got 3 more years. So
Sometimes it feels like it's already been like a whole 3 year span. This year has been unbelievable.
the pace at which things have changed, and the degree with which things have changed. I'm on this stream, and everyone's always, "Are you tired of winning yet?" Another big victory here, and the endangerment filing will be another big victory. These court cases are they're small victories in a bigger picture, right? They're additive. Each court case that gets declined puts pressure on other courts to say, look, there's a lot of courts that have looked at this and said this is bunk. And if they continue to disagree, then it'll have to wind up before the Supreme Court, where I don't think these environmentalists want those things to wind up at this stage.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you haven't done so already, all you men and women in the chat, leave your questions in there for the panel. We'll get to them at Q&A here in just a moment. But before we get to questions and answers, I want to say something about the sponsor of this here live stream, Advisor Metals. Now, if you listen to a lot of conservative shows, you hear tons of pitches for buying gold, silver, and other precious metals. There are so many companies out there, but we want to tell you why you should trust our sponsor, Advisor Metals. And it's the man who runs the company, and his name is Ira Bershatsky. Ira is the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he doesn't employ the high-pressure tactics or deceptive marketing ploys that you see often in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you're dealing in quality bullion. That is so much better when the time comes to liquidate this very valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you will have your investment sent directly and discreetly to your home. By the way, Ira is advertising on our program because he is an America First patriot. He doesn't donate to Democrats. He refuses to work with proxies of the Chinese Communist Party. And he, like us, abhor the machinations and schemes of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. And so we are very proud to have Advisor Metals as a sponsor. So if you want to diversify your portfolio, if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there for Ira, and he will make the process very easy for you. Again, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals and be sure to tell them who sent you, because that helps us and this program while you're helping your financial future. All right, let's get on to our second favorite part of the show, I suppose, which is Q&A. Take it away, Linnea.
There they are, those Google-eyed cretins. All right. Okay, so our first question that we have is from Mike, who I don't think I've seen in the chat before, but welcome, Mike, if you are new, and I'm sorry I didn't see you before if you have been here before. But he asks, where is PETA on the idiocy? I think this is with regards to the Bovar, cow feed additive and stuff. Sounds like unfettered experimentation on animals.
Well, they don't. The near meat stuff doesn't experiment on animals. They've got cultures that they work this stuff up from in a lab.
No, I think he's talking about like the feed additive to get rid of methane in the stomach of cattle. Yeah, they don't care.
I don't think PETA's taking a stance on that. So long as they're fed that additive or given the jab humanely.
I'm pretty sure that PETA objects to all use of animals.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you do to them; they don't want you using them
or eating them.
Well, yeah,
of course.
like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right. Nothing as it seems. Our good friend here asks, why is Gates buying up so much farmland?
Well, maybe he needs spaces for his new and improved cows. I don't know.
I think a lot of this stuff is just, Gates has a lot of money and a lot of time, and he enjoys investing in his hobby projects, and his hobby projects happen to be bad for us. So
maybe he thinks that if he controls agriculture, he will reduce emissions some way, leaving it fallow, not farming it. It could be that for the same reason that Chinese are trying to buy American farmland. They want to control us. They want us to have less.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, a lot of Gates's properties are like test plots where they do crop rotation, that kind of experimental agriculture, which is like thousands and thousands of years old. But that's most of what he's doing out there. But yeah, it's just creepy.
I mean, I think he's removing land from productive use. And he's got this net zero mentality. Anything you can remove from, productive use and emissions is good for the planet.
Of course, he's not the only billionaire doing that stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah. And China has its own agenda. So, farmers are selling out to the renewable energy industry, and we're losing farmland.
Yep. F. Kabluna says, where would we be with dramatically less greenhouse gases? The moon, Mars, Pluto, what would our comparison be? Anthony?
Oh, I think this goes back to the idea that, if we didn't have the greenhouse effect, the temperature of the earth would be like, 14 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that, if I remember correctly. The point is that we would not have a stable climate at all without the greenhouse effect. And so greenhouse gases are actually a blessing. We're getting a little more of them, but they don't seem to be doing much. The effect is minuscule, even though the projections are huge. They just haven't added up.
And the little more is saving us, in a sense. During the Ice Age, not the little Ice Age, but the real Ice Age that we came out of about 12, 18,000 years ago, during its depths, we were down to 180 parts per million CO2, 30 parts per million. And that's from a highs of more than 5,000 parts per million. Over time, it's just drawn down into carbonaceous rock and the oceans. And as that happens, there's less CO2 for plants. And if it got 30 parts per million less, plants can no longer photosynthesize, and life on Earth as we know it dies. I'm not just talking about humans. I'm talking about all the animals that rely on it, all the pollinate, all the insects. Eutrophic plants would be what was left.
Yep.
Last time CO2 levels were this high, sea levels were 20 feet higher. I think about that for a while, and then do emissions really matter?
All right. Wheelman asks, I've heard that the metric they use to evaluate climate change is a 30-year rolling average. If so, wouldn't that be far too short a sample to draw conclusions from? Anthony?
Well, let me take that because I have a little bit of a backstory that you're not going to believe. This is going to blow your mind. Jim Goodrich, who was my mentor in getting started in all of this, was the former state climatologist of California. He's since deceased. But he taught me all sorts of things. And one day I asked him that very question, why 30 years? And he said, and I quote, "It's because the forms we had available back then on paper only had 30 lines." That's what he said.
Science.
Well,
because they were using monthly forms, 30-day forms. And so they just basically expanded that to years, because back then they didn't have computers when all this got started. So, the monthly became the yearly period of 30 years simply because we had a convenient form to write it on.
So, Anthony, that's like everything else climate, just arbitrary. Why 1.5? Why 2.0? Why anything?
Why 1850?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those forms initially, of course, had 31 days to accommodate all months, but 31 years just didn't sound right. So 30 years became the norm.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I've always thought this about, when they talk about climate change, they're always saying it's global climate change. But the globe is made up of a lot of different regions and areas, a lot of different ecosystems, biospheres. And if you look around, what it is really is regional climate change. There is the globe. There are a lot of regions that aren't changing that much. Yeah. So it's not global change, it's regional change. And the regional change can be impacted not just by CO2. CO2 would be a global issue, but by all sorts of things that humans are doing, like logging in the rainforest, or slash and burn agriculture on the mountains in Mexico, putting soot on the glaciers. That affects the climate there. It changes it.
Yeah.
But it's not global climate change driven by CO2 emissions.
My pushback before we get, too off the rails here is that pretty much all standards of measurement ever are technically pretty arbitrary. I mean, look at the history of how the meter was invented. So it's just that human beings, we have to pick a number. Like, you have to pick something, and we're not robots. So we're going to pick something that's functionally useful to us. In the case of the meter, it's, here's the stick that we have. Yeah. This is what we're going to use from now on. And in the case of the 30-year rolling average, this is the documentation that we have available, or the ability to document that we have available to us. This is what we're going to use. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's bad.
That's all fine. But, when you talk about these things, it's useful to define your terms and why you have them. And there's a lot of things that are arbitrary that people think are science-based, especially the 1.5 and 2.0 goals, right? So, there's just a lot of arbitrary stuff built into this, but people think it's science, and it's not.
All right. We have a question from Robin over on X, who says, how can we overcome pernicious influence of the United Nations when it comes to open borders, WHO lockdowns, etc.? Steve?
Get out of it. Stop funding it. Look, the United Nations, the history of the thing is that it was formed, as World War II was winding down. and the U.S. staff assigned to develop, to organize the UN and the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund were Soviet agents like Alger Hiss and Harry Dexter White, who was the #2 Treasury official in the Roosevelt and Truman administration. These guys were Soviet agents organizing this stuff, for on behalf of the Soviets. And the fact that, these organizations have never accomplished anything. The World Bank has spent untold billions of dollars. Where have they eliminated, reduced, done anything to poverty? It's just, it's just a wasteoid as far as everything is done since World War II.
CO2 emissions and the Green Revolution by what was the agriculture, the guy that won the Nobel Prize for Agriculture? Borlaug. Yeah. Norman Borlaug and CO2 emissions have done more to reduce poverty than the UN's ever done.
Yeah. Yeah. And just technology and fossil fuels. That's what's moving the world ahead. It's not any of these, international do-gooder groups. And, the UN and all the rest have this, polluted heritage to start with. They weren't designed to succeed. They were designed to do something else.
Well, they were supposed, at least in theory, it was to stop wars, to prevent future wars. But we know how that's worked out, right?
Yeah. The only thing that's, we've developed to stop wars is nuclear weapons. That they have, there are little wars here and there, but they basically keep the peace.
Nuclear weapons and Donald Trump.
Nuking hurricanes. That's right. All right. Walter says, wouldn't Trump's rhetoric against climate alarmism be improved by using actual talking points rather than just calling it a hoax? My pushback on that would be no. The climate hoax phrasing works, and here's why. It's easy for us who are, neck deep in the science and everything to get frustrated with this phrasing because we're like, well, the climate does change, so it's not really a hoax that climate changes. But the left is not using the term climate change to address natural and anthropogenic climate change. They're using it, or they're not using it that way. They're using it to also package in all of their policy decisions, all of it. And they can switch that use of the term on and off at will. And they do. And you can watch them do it in a single paragraph in a Guardian article. So when he says it's a hoax, he is talking about the entire industry of climate, which is a hoax, which is, a scam and everything. So it's completely appropriate.
That's a con. He also called it a con job at the UN.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that when he uses those terms, not only is it largely accurate, but it catches attention. People, just like there's a reason why when politicians talk about crime, they don't talk about details. They talk about generalities. They show somebody getting out of prison. They say, he's going to kill you. And that politician supported it. And that's all you know about their position on crime. You got to catch people's imagination. And if Trump does anything well, it's that. And so once he says something like that, anyone who wants further information actually has to do a little research, look into it.
Yeah, people's eyes will glaze over if you start, because you can't fit climate science on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah, look, the left has owned the language, especially with the environment, since it began. And conservatives have always, one of the reasons that, we have had trouble, it's taken so long to win is because, the scary stuff makes headlines and they have clever language to do it. And all we have is paragraphs worth of explanation, paragraphs, pages, books. And that's a lot harder to communicate. I'm more than pleased that President Trump has, found two words, climate hoax, that communicate the issue. All the MAGA people understand climate hoax. That's fantastic. That's half the battle right there, to get the people on your side understanding what you understand. And, whether if all they know is climate hoax, well, that works for me. I mean, I don't expect people to spend as much time as we do learning this stuff.
Yeah, and he has been effective, tremendously so. This article at Politico has something, a subtitle that I never thought I would see. Climate change is out. Energy affordability is in. For Politico to write something like that, that's a sea change in thinking.
Yeah. I mean, the lead there says climate policy is unfashionable in 2025 among Democrats.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're winning. Guys.
And you called for it, never really came up during the campaign. Climate anyway. I mean, Trump talked about energy. Kamala Harris really didn't, but there was no climate talk. And the New York Times earlier had a similar headline like that. I follow this stuff very closely every day, as everybody else does. In the Washington Post, I mean, they talk a lot less about it. Now they write articles about hurricanes. They don't mention climate. Of course, there are no hurricanes that are hitting anything. So, but they really, they don't talk about this. And then, adding on to this, where I am in Washington, D.C., of course, it's been a lot cooler this year. And so that's even less fun to talk about for them. So they're kind of lost right now.
Yeah, you don't get, so you'll get, Trump says climate hoax, and you'll get people trying to get him to reevaluate his language or do that. But you don't see that on the left. You get someone, Michael Mann or something, will go online and will go, look, climate change is real. We just had a hurricane, and that's his evidence. And you don't get leftist scientists saying, well, Michael Mann, one single hurricane isn't proof of climate change. They don't police themselves like that.
When they say it's an existential threat, no one's out there saying, well, what do you mean? It's really, are we gonna all die?
I mean, you guys may remember in September 2023, Biden was at some UN or NATO fest. And he said that global warming by 2030 was going to be worse than nuclear war. And nobody said anything about it. And then, a few weeks after that, Fox was interviewing John Kirby, who was his, spokesman. And Fox asked Kirby about that statement. And Kirby goes, yeah, that's science. and no one said anything, so.
Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump has gotten the Pentagon out of the climate change business. He's gotten the EPA out of the climate change business. They're back to
there you go.
They're back to protecting the environment.
Yeah.
So enjoy a lot. Sometimes you don't realize you're in the good old days. That you're in your salad days. Enjoy every day that this agenda is being rolled back.
What I thought was telling about that article. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
What I thought was telling about. I like that they use the word fashionable. Because that's really what climate change is. It's a fashion statement. It's something like a small dog and a little purse with some Gucci clothing that you carry down the street, virtue signaling, saying, I care about climate too, until your energy costs come up. And then suddenly it's not fashion. You're no longer carrying the green armor anymore, because that's all it is. It's a fashion, hopefully a passing fashion. As soon as enough time passes and enough disasters don't happen, that sadly what will happen is the same progressives and leftists, socialists that are pushing this will then just move on to another environmental cause or another cause. But at least we won't have to talk about fake climate change.
I think they're just laying low until Trump goes away.
Oh, you think it'll be fashionable again?
I think.
Well, fashions do come around, right? That's what I'm saying. It's just a fashion statement.
I think it's going to come back, and that's why it's important for the Trump administration to take action to make that as difficult as possible.
And for Republicans to have the right man or woman replacing Trump when his term's finally over.
Well, so someone who's not going to like namby-pamby about it, right? Someone who's going to be Trump and say, no, you suck, we're not doing this, and move on. Can you imagine Romney addressing the UN about their tax, the carbon tax?
Yeah,
or like or any of these other guys being
No.
anywhere near as strong as Trump was on that. Him just saying heck no and then directing Rubio to take action on that. That's amazing stuff.
Well, so and that's the thing, with Trump actually has a little bit of depth. I mean, you can tell he's at least made some, study or read something. He knows why he feels how he does. He may not get it out perfectly all the time, but it's close enough. I understand what he's trying to say. I'm concerned that, since Jim Inhofe passed, there's really no Republican that could explain their way out of a paper bag on climate. And so I think we're always at risk because of that.
Well, we'll keep communicating the truth then. It'll get through.
Yeah.
All right. That was great. I'm going to address a question real quick that was directed towards me, which is, you said yesterday you won't be on In the Tank next week. Will you be here? I will try to be here. I will not be on In the Tank. Tragically, I have to be in New York City for a week. It'll be a cool project when it comes out, so I'll let you know when it does come out. It is climate related, and I think you're going to like it. But yeah, it's I will try to be here, but it's going to depend on how I'm able to get my tech set up.
It'll be your last visit to pre-commie New York City, so enjoy it.
Maybe, I don't know. I might have to go again. But it'll be close to my last visit before pre-common year. I don't know why we've all already given up on this, but it really does seem like that guy has the momentum behind him right now. But all right, we've got.
I think not too long. Should he be elected president? I think not too long after that, what you'll see is a New York that looks a little bit one of those zombie apocalypses films. No commerce going on. People shambling down homeless people shambling down the streets, asking for free food and money. More, give me.
They'll all be on the free buses. That'll be great.
Well,
Exactly.
I've got to say, his whole affordability thing is a lot like climate. All you have to do, if you're on the other side, is just use the word. I mean, I think one of Trump's advantages is he's thought about climate. He's a builder. He knows all the things you got to do to build something. And so he approaches every problem from that perspective. Whereas these people just say affordability, they have no idea how they would bring it about. No idea at all. I mean, what's he going to do? Force prices down, make people wealthier? What is crazy?
Yeah, a lot of these people that exist in these NGOs and in the UN and so forth, these bureaucracies have never held a real job where they have to perform.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. They have these grand schemes, have no idea how they might work or implement them. They just want to impose policy. That's all.
All right. We've got a whole bunch of good questions I want to get along to here. But Kite Man Music says, who gets the money from the global tax?
Nobody. It's dead.
Well, yeah. But if the tax went through, who gets the money?
It would have been the UN Green Climate Fund, which they would use for mitigation, aka wealth distribution to poorer countries who are claiming that they are slipping under the waves of sea level rise due to climate change.
You're so optimistic, Anthony, that's where it would really go. Come on. Half of it would be drained off by the pure bureaucracy itself, and the rest of it would be funding. Yeah, and the rest of it would be funding gelato. Italian gelato places in the middle of a jungle where no one can afford to eat gelato, because that's what they've used these funds for before. That they were used climate funds to fund a love story film in Argentina. Well, that's all about climate change. That certainly changed the state of the earth. The money would have been wasted. It would have been siphoned off by bureaucrats and politically connected elites.
The short answer is the usual climate grifters. That's
exactly
kleptocrats and people who live in controlled tyrannical governments. That's it.
Yeah. Spinning that to the whole story we had earlier about the cows, we can basically say their whole viewpoint is grift. It's what's for dinner.
Yeah.
So Tom White asks, are there studies indicating clean fuel for shipping contributes to warming because of less particulates blocking sunlight?
There are there's multiple studies that came out in the last few years that postulate that the reduction in sulfur dioxide emissions and particulates from ships have contributed to the warming of the oceans. That more sun's getting through, it's heating the surface layer of the oceans, which is what we measure basically.
Well,
if you send me an email, Tom, after we get off, I may not get to it this afternoon, but I can send you links to the various studies that have argued this.
Awesome. And then we actually do have a question about the Heartland UK website. I know we probably can't address this so much. Okay, I'll give it to Jim. This person, Jerry Palmer, says, I tried to sign up for emails, and every time I hit the submit button, I get the message, refresh the page and try again. Is this a known issue?
Actually, I saw that in the questions for this Q&A, Jerry, and I screen capped it and I WhatsApped it to our friends over there in the United Kingdom who run that website, and they said they were not aware of that. They're going to get their website team to look into it, and thanks for flagging it for us. So how about that for service all the way around the globe in less than a minute?
Yep, that's awesome.
We live in amazing times.
Steve, this is a tough one for you.
Hmm.
From Kabluna, what's the latest on the endangerment finding? Is anybody listening to Steve and maybe talking about speeding up the process?
Well, I don't know who they're listening to. I think the shutdown, whatever was going to happen, the shutdown has slowed things. There's litigation going on, and the last hearing was scheduled for September 22nd, but the judge couldn't make that, and then the shutdown happened, and I think all the courts are, discombobulated, if not closed. So there's nothing on the schedule yet. The comment period is over. If I was the Trump administration, I would just say, well, we'll worry about the science later. Now we'll just get rid of the endangerment finding based on the fact that it was illegal, not supported by the express authorization of Congress. And then, maybe they'll just do it during the UN climate conference in November. You may recall that the original endangerment finding was issued by EPA during the Copenhagen conference in 2009. So, how poetic would it be for during the 2025 conference for the U.S. to say, well, CO2, sorry, gone.
Yeah. But by the way, some breaking news. I don't know if you guys saw this today, but Trump has opened up Anwar to drilling again. That just happened today. So lots of great news going on.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem with that is really just getting companies to bid on the leases. There's really kind of a glut of oil right now and natural gas, and so.
All right, so we've got a question from Mike Springstead, who I have not seen in the chat before. So welcome, Mike, who says, realistically, wouldn't the prevention of land usage be an environmental injury setting up for erosion and such? Sterling?
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat it?
Yeah, I've got it up on the screen as well. But he says, wouldn't the prevention of land usage be an environmental injury setting up for erosion and such? So like if cattle were taking off the land, if you weren't doing stuff with it, would it just be left to like dissolve away on its own?
Well, I don't think that can honestly be answered. Buffalo existed before cattle. If you like prairies, buffalo were good things. If you like forests, not so much. If you want, oil production changes things. You dam rivers, you no longer have wild rivers, but then you have lakes. You have different kinds of fish. So it's just a matter of perspective as to whether there's environmental injury. It's sort of a time slice view of what nature should look like. And I don't believe in that. Nature evolves over time. It's hard for me to judge what an environmental injury is. I can say I don't like deserts as much as I like forests. So in Sterling's world, we'd have lots of deserts and mountains with trees. But is that the ideal environment? And if there's less of that, is that some environmental injury we should be correcting? You certainly wouldn't have more runoff if you have fewer cows, because you'd have more plants digging in roots. If you cut back on agriculture, one of the causes of runoffs from farms is tilling. That's why so many of them no-till agriculture. So it depends on the types of moves they make and what type of micro environmental conditions that you like in a particular location.
Yeah, and it should
Sterling,
be. It should be.
I have to ask you, Sterling, is Sterling's World anything like Wayne's World?
No, because I have less hair and I'm not nearly as cool. So,
But you are not worthy, so that there is a little bit of a.
There you go.
But I'm just going to add. I think we should remember that humans are part of nature too, and human activity is part of nature. We are not an invasive species. We're the apex species, but humans are part of nature too, and our activity counts.
How dare you?
And I'll just add that privately owned land is typically taken care of better than publicly owned land.
Yes.
Because you got people that owners have an interest in their land. The government has no interest except just accumulating stuff.
Yep. Perfect example of that happened in Chico, California, where back around the 96, 95, they started coming up with a way to circumvent a new high school being built on a plot of agricultural land, which was used for grazing. And they came up with this thing called meadow foam, Butte County meadow foam, which they created out of thin air, literally. They found this one particular subspecies of a subspecies, and then they got it listed on the endangered species list, right? And so this farmland that had been used for cattle grazing basically was all now off limits for building. So in order to be able to get some things done, they had to provide some mitigation stuff. And the guy that owned the land, the Schmidbauer family, ended up donating a portion of that land that had the most meadow foam on it to the city so that they could make a preserve out of it, right? So they put a fence around it, right? Even though the cattle were still on the other parts of the land, they put a fence around this preserve because that's owned by the city now. We can't have people walking on it, right? So what happens is that the whole thing became overgrown with invasive weeds and choked out all the meadow foam, completely destroying it.
Government at work.
Cases. Yeah.
Well, look, you've got another, great example with when Mount St. Helens exploded, right? Anyone who's ever looked at the national forests that were not, they decided to let nature take its course. Lots of them still look like moonscapes over there. The earth hardened with rain. It became like concrete, so trees weren't coming up. The surrounding private and state lands, on the other hand, were quickly reseeded and reforested. Where spotted owls don't do well? On federal lands after Mount St. Helens in the region. You know where they do well? Well, the adjoining state and federal lands. And now, of course, the feds don't like barred owls, so they want to kill the barred owls to save that particular species.
And then, all these wildfires in California, for example, they occur on public lands. They don't occur on private lands. They occur on public lands where there's been no forest management.
Yeah.
Sterling, I have a story about barred owls, but I'll save it for after the show. But I have great experiences with the barred owls. All right, so we have a couple more questions here that I want to get to. One of them is this one from Alan on X, who says, is the U.S. self-sufficient in oil now?
Well,
I mean, I can answer in that self-sufficiency in oil isn't a matter of material presence of oil. It's a matter of choice politically. We import oil to the East Coast because we're not allowed to ship our own oil to the East Coast. Because they block off pipelines and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I have the answer right here. I looked it up under the Energy Information Administration. It says the United States has been an annual net total energy exporter since 2019.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say we're self-sufficient.
Yeah, we're self-sufficient, but we still import anyway because of weird shipping laws and stuff. So,
well, and the types of refineries, the types of oil we use.
Yeah.
Some of our refineries aren't built to deal with heavy oil or light oil.
Our good friend Engineer Guy SE wants to know how hurricane season is going. I would say hurricane season is in terms of number of storms, probably on track for the like low end of the prediction, but we have not gotten landfalls except for, I guess Alaska just had a Pacific typhoon, or at least the remnants of one, do a lot of flooding damage. But we've seen, Bermuda got hit twice this year, I think. So that's unfortunate for them. But yeah, they've been skedaddling away from our coasts, thank God, this year. We've had a lot of storms, they just haven't come to land. So that's
well,
nice.
I heard 2 days ago that we were about to have one that was supposed to form yesterday. I don't know if it's formed. I think if it had, we'd have heard about it. And was heading. They suspected that the cone would take it to Florida, sometime next week, but we'll see.
Yeah, before the show I checked the hurricane.gov chart, and they've got one in the one around Cuba, not a storm, but like a 30% chance of developing region around that's not around Cuba, around like Haiti, and then the other one is out in the middle of nowhere. So I think we're okay this year.
Still have 6 weeks to go.
Yeah.
So anything can happen. We'll see.
And you probably just jinxed us.
Yeah. Sorry. Knock on wood.
Smooth move, Linnea.
I know. Now it's gonna come right for me too, is my luck. I got lucky twice this year. It probably won't happen again. So all right. So Randy, who I also don't think I've seen in the chat before, we've got a lot of new people today, and I wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining the chat. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. There are a lot of show inside jokes and stuff that have developed over time here. So we really appreciate all you guys in the chat. But Randy says, has Trump banned all offshore wind projects? The Oregon coast communities are hoping so.
I think the short answer is no. He has banned some. There's some in court. The largest one is still slated to be built, but he's. I think he's got some. He's got his own ideas of what he's doing with all this stuff. I know that he has backed off canceling projects off the shore of New York because he's trying to get some gas pipelines through there. So he's trying to do some trades. Anytime he talks about wind, he pretty much craps on it, and solar as well at this point. So he's definitely against it. The short answer is no. But I think that his heart's in the right place. So
there's no new projects, but it's a lot harder to stop projects that were already underway before he took office. That's a little
he's not offering any new leases, any new permitting. He's not accepting new permitting for offshore wind. There are about 4 of them that are still going on in various states of construction. The biggest one, the one off Virginia, we're in court with our friends at CFACT and another group fighting that, and we were asked to delay. So that's supposed to happen sometime in November. We might get a ruling. The government may shift its position, but right now there's a couple of them that are doing pile driving and erecting turbines. Ørsted, they go back and forth. They say they're going to complete their project in 2027 now. But Ørsted has their big problem has always been not just administration, but funding. And so one time they tell you, well, we got plenty of funding. And the next time they say, oh, we can't do this at the rate that we're being allowed to charge, shipping cost, inflation, it's all going up. And so it's costing us more, so we can't do it. So who knows what will happen with Ørsted? They've canceled other projects, not just in the United States, but around the world. Japan has canceled projects. I think I don't want to speak. I don't want to be wrong, but it could be Denmark or one of the other sort of Scandinavian countries in the North Sea have canceled projects. And then one country offered leases and no one bought. So a couple of them might get built. We're still hoping to stop them all, but we'll see.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
just saw
lightning-
yesterday Orsted is laying off 25% of its workforce over the next couple of years.
Okay, we've got lightning round for last. 2 questions on my list here, and then I will set you all free. So we've got LT Oracle of Truth, who says, "Why don't they talk about the emissions and destruction that wars cause?" Well, they did. I mean, John Kerry was opining. Yeah, John Kerry was opining the carbon emissions of the Russian invasion of Ukraine like right away. That's the first thing he was worried about. So,
And I believe he was advocating for electric trucks and electric tanks and Jeeps and stuff too on the battlefield. Real for us, for the United States. So we get slaughtered out there. Great job.
I'm surprised he didn't advocate for the neutron bomb because it leaves the buildings instead of burning them. So, it killed all the people, but at least the buildings aren't burning, putting emissions into the air. And of course, the real emissions come not from the war itself, but from rebuilding.
All right. And then Wheelman says, how can we evaluate whether we're seeing a warming, cooling, or other phenomena as a trend if the time period we're studying is too short? Anthony?
Well, I think what we need to do is change the length of the year, right? So we can make a bigger piece of paper, because that's what it got started with. But, you're right. A lot of these 30-year trends don't really capture Earth's processes. Earth's processes run much longer than that, some as long as hundreds of years or more. And so, the 30-year average, that's great for humans because it fits within our lifespan. But a lot of these processes act on time scales that are beyond our lifespans, and we don't recognize them. So, we need to look deeper. We need to look into natural causes of climate change over long periods and, roll that into the current viewpoint.
All right, that's all I got. I'll hand it back to you, Jim.
All right, that will do it for today's Climate Realism Show. I want to thank our very special guest and friend, Steve Malloy, for being on here with us to share the very good news that we narrowly avoided a global climate tax, but we will keep our eye on that. It should never, ever happen. I want to thank our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, CO2 Coalition, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and Heartland UK Europe. Thank you, Linnea, Anthony, and Sterling for being on the show as we usually are. It was great to see you again all today. Always visit climaterealism.com. That's where you can see us producing materials or stories, I should say, countering the climate alarmism that is infected the mainstream media. Go to climateataglance.com, and in fact, go to amazon.com and buy the new second edition of Climate at a Glance. It's fantastic. It was the #1 seller in environmental science this week, so we want to keep it up there in the rankings. So please buy that book and leave a review, would be very helpful as well. And you can go to heartland.org, where you can subscribe to the Climate Change Weekly newsletter done every week by our very own Sterling Burnett. Again, thank you all in the chat for being here today. Thank to all of our viewers and listeners, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.